I moved deeper into the black forest, pushing past midnight. My boots crunched over pine needles, a steady rhythm on the trail. I was Christopher Miles, and I lived for moments like this. Solo night hikes, just me and the quiet of the woods. I had been planning this trip for weeks, craving the deep, almost heavy silence that settled after the sun went down. The air had a bite to it, a cold that seeped into my jacket, but I liked it. It kept me sharp. I glanced at my watch, the faint glow of the digital numbers showing a little past 12. It was just me out here, surrounded by miles of trees, and a strange sense of calm washed over me. It was a good feeling, the kind of peace you could only find when you were completely disconnected. I slipped my water bottle out of my pack and took a long drink, the cold water tasting good. After a moment, I put it back in its spot, zipped up the pocket, and kept moving. My camera was tucked safely inside my backpack, a habit for night shoots. Suddenly, the world went black. My high-powered flashlight, the only thing cutting through the thick forest night, flickered once, then just died. It wasn't a slow fade, it was an abrupt, jarring cutoff, like a switch had been flipped. 1 second, I had a cone of bright white light showing me every root and rock. The next, I was swallowed by an absolute crushing darkness. It was so complete that for a second, I actually thought my eyes had closed, but they were wide open. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. My hand shot down to my pack, searching for the small side pocket where I kept emergency batteries. My fingers brushed against the familiar fabric, dipped inside, and found nothing but empty space. I tried again, feeling around with more desperation, pushing aside the spare gloves and a small first aid kit. Still nothing, just hollow fabric. I swore under my breath, a low, frustrated growl. How could I have forgotten them? It was such a basic, stupid mistake, the kind of thing a rookie hiker would do. I always packed spare batteries. It was rule number 1 for night excursions, but not tonight, apparently. Tonight, I was caught completely unprepared. The silence that had felt so peaceful only a minute ago now pressed in on me. It wasn't quiet anymore. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket that wrapped around me, stealing all sound, even my own breathing. I stood there, trapped in the middle of nowhere, completely disoriented. My eyes tried to adapt, but there was nothing. No faint moon glow, no distant light from civilization. Just a solid, unchanging blackness. I pulled my cell phone out of my jacket pocket, fumbling in the thick dark until I found the power button. The small screen lit up, a small square of artificial light that did little to fight the vast dark around me. A small icon in the top corner showed 0 bars, no signal. Of course, why would there be out here? This was the deepest, most remote part of the Black Forest, miles from any cell tower, miles from anyone. The realization hit me hard. I was truly, completely alone and blind. The calm I'd felt before had evaporated, replaced by a sudden tightening knot of unease in my stomach. I was in a place I loved, a place I knew well, but without light it felt alien, hostile even. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, which I usually enjoyed, now felt amplified, threatening. My eyes strained, trying to pick out any hint of a path, any outline of a tree, but it was useless. I stood in a void, my senses stripped away, relying only on what I could hear, and all I could hear was the unnerving silence and the shallow, quick sound of my own breath. I stood there, the reality of my situation settling in, heavy and cold. The silence that had once brought me peace now felt like a living thing, pressing in from all sides. Minutes stretched, feeling longer than they had any right to. My frustration about the dead flashlight and forgotten batteries slowly changed into a quiet unease, a knot tightening in my gut. It wasn't just being blind in the dark anymore, it was the intense, profound isolation, miles from anywhere, without a way to call for help. My hand went to my backpack again, not for batteries this time, but for something, anything, that might offer a shred of security. I felt around in the main compartment, my fingers brushing past the cold metal of my camera, then my extra layers. I kept pushing, searching for the small plastic emergency whistle I always packed. It was a habit, a small bit of preparation for the unlikely event I'd truly need it. I mean, what were the odds? I hiked this forest all the time, but now it felt like the most important thing in the world. My fingers finally closed around the thin cord attached to the whistle. I pulled it out, the smooth plastic feeling surprisingly solid in my palm. My mind raced, trying to figure out what I should even do. Blast it right then? Maybe, but what if it just drew more unwanted attention? I didn't even know what I was afraid of yet. The lack of answers was making everything worse. Just as I got the whistle firmly in my grasp, two small glowing points of light appeared ahead of me. They were maybe 50 feet away, low to the ground, about the height of a medium-sized dog or a fox. They weren't a steady beam, more like two distinct bright spots, eerily similar to eyes. My breath hitched. They were too far apart to be a single creature, like if an animal turned its head. But they weren't turning. They just sat there, unwavering, and weirder still, they moved in tandem, bobbing slightly, like whatever they belonged to was breathing or shifting its weight. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up. My blood ran cold, a sudden sharp jolt. My mind immediately tried to find any other explanation. It had to be some trick of my eyes, right? Maybe a weird glow from some fungi on a log, or fireflies that were much bigger and brighter than any I'd ever seen. But the glow felt too intense, too steady for that. It wasn't fading or flickering. It was consistent, like tiny focused lamps. And it wasn't the soft yellow light of fireflies. This was a sharper, almost greenish yellow, the color you see in bad dreams. I stood completely still, staring into the dark, willing my eyes to make sense of what I was seeing. The two glowing points just stayed there, unblinking, unmoving, except for that slight, unnerving bob. I couldn't hear a single thing, not a rustle, not a twig snap, nothing to indicate something was actually there. It was just those perfect glowing orbs, hanging in the absolute blackness. As I watched, more glowing pairs of eyes materialized around me, seemingly out of nowhere. One pair popped up to my left, closer than the first, maybe 20 feet away, then another to my right, a little further back. They kept appearing, some higher off the ground, some lower, until they formed a loose circle around me. I was completely surrounded. All of them were silent, all watching. The air felt thick, heavy with their unseen presence. I couldn't hear rustling, no footsteps, nothing that should accompany living creatures. Only these silent, unwavering points of light. It was like they floated, suspended in the void. Panic started to bubble up, cold and sharp. This wasn't an animal. Or, if it was something I'd never heard of. Something that moved without a sound. Something with eyes that glowed in the dark like that. The thought made my skin crawl. Every sense I had screamed at me to run, to get out. But where? I was in the middle of a blind, dark circle. I took a slow, careful step back, my boots sinking a little into the soft forest floor. My eyes stayed glued to the nearest pair of lights. As I moved, they moved too, shifting in sync with me, maintaining their distance. They didn't close in, but they didn't let me get away either. It was almost like they were casually following, making sure I stayed within their perimeter. I took another step back, then another, trying to put more distance between myself and the nearest pair of eyes. They continued to track me, their glow unwavering, their silence complete. It was an impossible situation. I was surrounded by dozens of unseen things, things that didn't make a sound but could see me perfectly in the dark. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry, tight. The whistle was still clutched tightly in my hand, the plastic digging into my palm. My mind raced, desperate for an explanation, for a way out. What was this? It wasn't any animal I knew. Not a deer, not a bear, not even a mountain lion. Their eyes didn't glow like this. Not for real. This was something else. Something utterly terrifying. I was trapped, eyes all around me, and I couldn't even see the dark shapes they belonged to. I couldn't just stand there, not with those eyes all around me. It was like I was caught in some weird silent game, and I was definitely losing. My mind was still racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, or rather what I wasn't seeing. No bodies, no shapes, just the glow. It felt completely wrong. I started to move, slow and careful, turning my body so I was facing what I thought was the way back to the road. Every footstep felt heavy, like my boots were made of lead. The glowing eyes shifted with me, staying on the edges of my vision. They didn't get closer, but they didn't go away either. They just kept that perfect circle, perfectly silent. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to do anything to break the tension that was building up inside me. It was like they were waiting, just watching to see what I would do. I thought about yelling, just letting out a huge shout to see what would happen. Maybe it would scare them off, or maybe it would make them react, give me some clue as to what they actually were. But then a colder thought cut through that idea. What if something did respond? What if the things attached to those eyes were even worse than what my mind was already coming up with? The thought stopped me cold. I didn't want to find out. Not yet, anyway. The air around me seemed to get colder, a sharp chill that cut right through my jacket. It wasn't just the usual night air. It felt like something was actually sucking the warmth out of the space. The silence, which had been bad before, now felt even thicker, heavier, like a physical weight pressing down on me. The only sound was my own breathing, short and ragged, like I'd just run a sprint. I could feel my chest going up and down, a desperate rhythm in the quiet.
I tried to remember the trail, the way it twisted and turned, the familiar landmarks I knew by heart. I'd hiked this part of the Black Forest 100 times, in daylight, in twilight, even in the middle of the night with my good flashlight. I knew every route, every dip in the path. But now it was like I'd never been here before. The darkness was total, erasing everything. My sense of direction was completely gone. I couldn't tell front from back, up from down. It was all just a vast black void. My foot caught on something, probably a root, or maybe a rock I usually stepped over without thinking. I stumbled, pitching forward, and went down hard on one knee. A jolt of pain shot up my leg. My hands went out to steady myself, landing on damp earth and pine needles. I pushed off, trying to get back up, my head still spinning from the sudden fall. The moment I hit the ground, the glowing eyes moved. They didn't just track me, they actually closed in, shrinking their circle, moving closer than they had been. It was immediate, a quick coordinated movement in the dark. Now they were maybe 10 or 15 feet away, a lot closer than I wanted them to be. The nearest pair seemed brighter, more intense now that they were so near. The sheer speed of their synchronized movement made a fresh wave of panic wash over me. It meant they weren't just passively observing, they were reacting. I scrambled back up, pushing off the ground with my hands, ignoring the ache in my knee. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. I had to move. Staying still was an invitation, and falling down seemed to be some kind of signal for them. I took a quick step, then another, picking up speed. It wasn't a walk anymore. It was a desperate jog, a blind run deeper into the trees. I knew I was just going further into the unknown, probably getting even more lost, but the sight of those eyes, so close now, propelled me forward. Fear was a hot, sharp blade pushing me from behind. I didn't care where I was going, just that I was getting away from them. My feet moved on their own, finding some kind of rhythm even in the absolute dark. I pushed through low-hanging branches that slapped against my face, through bushes that tugged at my clothes. I could feel the ground changing beneath my feet, sometimes soft with pine needles, sometimes rough with unseen rocks. I didn't dare look back. I just ran, my breath coming in painful gasps. The silence around me remained, except for the frantic sound of my own movement. There was no crashing from the eyes, no rustling to show they were keeping up. It was just assumed, just known, that they were still there, still circling, still silent. Then, just when I thought I might actually be finding some kind of escape, my foot caught again. This time there was no chance to catch myself. I pitched forward, losing all balance, and hit the ground hard. My hands flew out, but it wasn't enough. My head snapped forward, and there was a sickening crack as the right side of my forehead connected with something solid, something unmoving. It wasn't a soft landing into dirt or leaves. It felt like rock, or a thick, gnarled root. A searing, white-hot pain exploded behind my eyes, and for a long moment, everything went black, much blacker than the forest night. The glowing eyes, which had been so vivid just a second before, vanished completely. The world spun, a dizzying, sickening swirl of nothingness. I couldn't hear the ringing in my ears, or feel the cold ground, or even my own body. It was just me, floating in a void of pure hurt. Slowly, painfully, my vision started to clear, or at least, some kind of vision. It was blurry at first, like looking through thick glass, but it definitely wasn't the absolute dark I'd been seeing. The swirling started to die down, reforming into the familiar, oppressive blackness of the forest night. But the eyes were gone, completely. Not a single glowing speck remained. They had just vanished, as if they were never there. The silence returned, not the cold, heavy silence of fear from before, but a hollow, empty quiet that felt even more profound, more unsettling. The forest was truly silent now, without those watching points of light. The only sound was a deafening, high-pitched ringing in my ears, a loud, constant hum that seemed to vibrate inside my skull. My head throbbed with a fiery, intense pain, right above my right eye. I could feel something warm and sticky oozing down my face. My hand went up, pressing against the spot, feeling the dampness. I pulled my hand away in the dark, and though I couldn't see it, I knew what the sticky feeling was. Blood. I pushed off the ground, trying to get my legs under me. My knee was still aching from the first fall, and now my head felt like it had been split open. My body screamed in protest, but I had to get up. I had to move. The eyes might be gone, but the feeling of being hunted, of being utterly vulnerable in this dark, silent place, hadn't left me. If anything, it felt worse now. I was completely alone again, and whatever had been watching was now truly unseen. My head swam, a sick, dizzy feeling washing over me. I pushed myself up, my muscles screaming in protest. The right side of my forehead throbbed with a burning, sharp pain, right where I'd hit that solid thing. My hand went up, pressing against the swollen spot, and when I pulled it away, I could feel the wet stickiness. I rubbed my fingers together, And even in the absolute dark, I knew what it was. Blood. It wasn't pouring, but it was definitely there, thick and warm. The glowing eyes were gone, not a trace of them. 1 second they were there, like glowing coals, and the next, poof, nothing. It was like they'd never existed, just a trick of my mind in the dark, or maybe the pain in my head was making me see things. But I knew they were real. I knew what I'd seen. Their disappearance left a hole in the night, a hollow, empty quiet that felt even worse than before. The forest was truly silent now, without those watching points of light, just the constant high-pitched ringing in my ears. It buzzed inside my skull, loud enough to block out everything else. I tried to get my bearings, to shake off the disorientation. My scout training, all those hours spent learning to navigate by stars, by moss on trees, by anything but a flashlight beam, flooded my mind. But it was useless. There were no stars to see through the thick tree cover, no moss I could find by feel, just blackness, deep and suffocating. My head hurt so much, it was hard to think straight, hard to focus on anything beyond the throbbing. Every breath I took felt shallow and desperate. A weird smell drifted into the air around me. It was faint at first, then stronger, a metallic scent, almost like ozone after a summer storm, the kind of smell you get right before the thunder breaks, and the sky opens up. But there was no rain, no storm, just that strange sharp smell, like old machinery, or maybe something burnt and chemical. I tried to place it, but my mind just couldn't land on anything familiar. It made the air feel heavier somehow. I strained my ears, trying to hear anything over the ringing in my head, and the frantic sound of my own breathing. I listened for a rustle, a twig snap, a distant animal cry, anything that wasn't just me lost in the dark. The silence stretched, vast and empty. It was so quiet it felt unnatural, like everything else in the forest had just stopped existing, just to focus on me. Then I felt it. It wasn't a sound I heard with my ears. Not exactly. It was more like a vibration, a low guttural growl that resonated through the ground, up through my boots, and deep into my chest. It was huge, nothing like a dog's bark or a bear's rumble. This was something different, something that shook the very earth around me. It came from somewhere nearby. I couldn't tell exactly where in the total dark, but it was close. The hair on my arms stood up, a prickling sensation spreading across my skin. My breath hitched. This thing, whatever it was massive. I couldn't imagine any animal in these woods making a sound that deep, that powerful. It sounded like something out of a nightmare, something ancient and terrible. The growl stopped as quickly as it started, leaving behind an even more profound quiet. But I could still feel the lingering vibration in the ground, a faint hum that told me it had been real, not a figment of my throbbing head. A sudden pressure settled over me, a distinct change in the atmosphere. It wasn't just the cold anymore. It was like the air itself had thickened, grown heavy, as if something enormous had just materialized right next to me. I couldn't see it, couldn't hear it, but I felt its presence, a huge unseen mass filling the space around me. It was like standing next to a mountain, a physical weight pressing down. My whole body tensed, every muscle locked up. The glowing eyes now felt like a warning, a prelude to something far worse. They hadn't been the real threat, just a sign that I was being watched, that something was in here with me. Something large and terrifying was hunting me, and it had finally decided to move in. That feeling, the intense pressure, solidified it. Whatever made that growl, whatever was creating that eerie pressure, was here, right now, and it knew exactly where I was. I dropped to my hands and knees, instinctively trying to make myself smaller, lower to the ground. My head spun from the sudden movement, and a fresh wave of nausea washed over me. I ignored it, pushing forward blindly. I needed cover. I needed to hide, to find anything solid to put between myself and whatever was breathing that heavy air a few feet away. I began to crawl slowly, feeling ahead with my hands, sweeping them back and forth over the damp pine needles and rough dirt. Every inch felt like a mile. Every sound, even the rustle of my own clothes, felt like a shout in the overwhelming silence. I just kept going, inch by painful inch, desperate for any kind of shelter from the unseen, terrifying presence that was now distinctly, palpably here. I pushed myself forward, moving on my hands and knees, sweeping my hands over the ground, hoping to find anything at all to get behind. The low growl from before came back, deeper this time, more like a physical vibration that rattled through the ground and up into my bones. It felt like the earth itself was shaking, just from this sound. I tried to crawl faster, but my head was still spinning, and my knee protested with every movement. My vision was no help at all. It was just total black, so I had to rely completely on what I could feel. Then I noticed another weird thing: heat. It wasn't just the warmth of my own body. It was a distinct, unnatural warmth coming from somewhere really close by. It was enough to make the cold forest air feel strange, almost humid in that one spot, like something huge and hot was breathing right there. The heat pulsed, fading a little, then coming back stronger, almost like a living thing. It was unnerving, this warmth in the middle of a freezing night, telling me whatever was growling was organic and massive. My outstretched hand finally hit something solid. It was rough, uneven bark, and I knew instantly it was a tree. Not just any tree, but a big one, its trunk wide and sturdy. I started to pull myself toward it, trying to get my back against it, to put at least something between me and the growling, unseen thing. I dragged myself around to the far side of the trunk, pressing my body as flat as I could against the rough surface. Every fiber in my being was screaming at me to disappear, to become invisible. Just as I settled in, a massive gust of wind roared past me. It wasn't like a normal wind that blew through trees. This was a concentrated blast, powerful enough to tear at my clothes and whip my hair across my face. It carried the strong metallic ozone smell from before, but now it was overpowering, thick and choking. It made the air feel electrified, somehow, heavy with that sharp, almost chemical scent. The force of it almost ripped me from the tree. Then I heard it, a distinct sharp crack. Not one, but several, like massive branches snapping under an incredible force. It sounded like something huge was moving, tearing its way through the trees in my immediate vicinity, maybe just a few feet away. The sounds were loud, raw, and undeniable. Unlike the silent approach of the glowing eyes, this thing wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. It was just moving, breaking whatever was in its path. I pressed myself harder against the tree, my body rigid, refusing to move, barely even daring to breathe. Every muscle was locked up, preparing for something I couldn't imagine. A cold, slick sensation brushed against my left leg. It was fleeting, just a quick drag, like something long and heavy was moving past, scraping against my pants. It felt smooth and hard, like scales, or perhaps polished stone, but definitely organic. I flinched violently, yanking my leg back as fast as I could, my entire body recoiling from the unexpected touch. It was gone instantly, vanished as soon as it appeared, but the feeling lingered, a disgusting, chilling memory on my skin. I pulled my legs in tight against my chest, trying to make myself as small as possible. My eyes squeezed shut. The growling intensified. It was now directly in front of me, so close I could feel the vibrations in the tree trunk against my back. It was deeper, more resonant, a sound that vibrated through my chest and shook my teeth, and with it, a putrid smell assaulted my senses. It was horrible, a mix of something decaying and chemical, like rotting meat soaked in industrial cleaner. It was so strong it made my eyes water and my stomach heave. I instinctively clamped a hand over my mouth and nose, trying to block out the vile stench. I squeezed my eyes shut even tighter, unable to bring myself to look in the direction of the sound. I didn't want to see it. I couldn't. I knew I was trapped, with nowhere left to run in the consuming darkness. The growl was deafening, the smell overwhelming, and I just knelt there, pressed against the tree. Then just as suddenly as it had come, it stopped. The air grew still. The growling cut out, leaving behind an absolute, unnerving quiet. The heat that had been radiating nearby faded, and the familiar cold of the forest night returned. Even the putrid smell seemed to lessen, though a faint lingering trace still hung in the air. Time seemed to stretch out, long and empty, as I knelt there, my heart pounding, straining my ears, waiting for something, anything to happen. Nothing did. Slowly, carefully, I opened my eyes. The darkness was total again, the blackness I'd grown used to, or at least accepted, since my flashlight died. There was no shape, no form, no hint of the massive thing that had just been inches from me. The glowing eyes were still gone. The ringing in my ears had finally started to die down, replaced by the faint normal sounds of the forest night. Crickets chirped somewhere in the distance. A slight breeze rustled the leaves, and the subtle scent of pine needles started to replace the foul odor. I was completely alone in the silent, dark forest. My muscles ached, my head pounded, and my knee throbbed, but I pushed myself up, slowly, shakily, to a standing position. My hand slid around the tree trunk, steadying me. It felt real, solid, a tangible thing in a night that had been full of impossible terrors. The silence was different now. It wasn't the heavy, watchful silence from before, or the hollow emptiness after the eyes disappeared. This was a true, natural silence, the kind you hear in the deep woods at night. Regular, just the normal sounds of the forest, undisturbed. I took a deep, shaky breath, and the metallic ozone smell was barely there now, almost completely gone. The cold, putrid scent had lessened to just a ghost of what it had been. Whatever it was gone. Not like the eyes,
which could have been illusions or shadows, but something truly physical, something that had moved through the trees, that I had felt. It had just left. I didn't know why or how, but it was gone, and I was still here. I leaned against the tree, letting my breath out in a long, slow sigh. My legs felt weak, my whole body was shaking, but I was standing. I was alive. I even managed to find a sliver of my sense of direction. It was a faint feeling, almost instinctual, but it told me which way was generally out. All the prior fear, the panic, the absolute terror, started to drain away, replaced by an immense exhaustion. It was like running a marathon, but one where every step was a gamble with my life. I knew I couldn't just stand there. I had to keep moving, had to get back to the road, back to people, back to safety. My phone was dead, my flashlight was useless, and I was still hurt, but I felt clearer than I had in hours. The ringing in my ears was just a phantom now, gone like the eyes in the monster. I took a first tentative step, then another. My movements were slow, careful, but they were forward, in a straight line. I didn't know how long it would take, but I was going to make it, one step at a time. The fear that had pushed me so hard, just moments before, now gave way to a quiet determination. I was going to walk out of this forest. I just was.